Thank you, Keith. So it's 7:01, so I'll go ahead and start the meeting. First thing I would do, Brian's not here, so Russ, if you'd like to join us at the table. Alternate, you'll be an official member. Thank you. Do you need a minute, Murray, to?
Oh, I need about 5.
Okay, whoa, you need a pen?
So
Are you gonna type?
if I have nothing to type into unless I get a
Okay.
Word document, which might have been the last meeting's minutes, I can start.
Oh, I think Olivia will handle the meeting minutes for us.
Okay.
You can just focus on,
Okay, great.
on any new business. So Murray is going to be taking minutes for us tonight. Other than Olivia will be helping with the minutes from the previous 2 meetings. So we'll start with the minutes from the January 3rd meeting. And there was a hearing that night as well.
I have one question.
Okay,
Says Russ asked a question regarding setbacks for the test pits.
page, can you s-
Page 1,
page 1.
near the bottom, second to last paragraph.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked if the test pit on lot 24-1 was 75 feet from wetlands.
Okay. Not from the lot lines.
That Russ asked if the test pit on lot 24-1 was 75 feet from wetlands.
Rather than the front,
Wetlands, not the lot line.
Right.
right.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm wondering if that microphone can be passed down to Russ, just so it's easier to hear for those viewing at home. Does anybody have any other edits for the January 3rd meeting?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from January 3rd as amended.
Second,
We'll do a roll call vote. George,
yes,
Russ?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Murray?
I was.
Okay, Alan?
Yeah.
And Keith? So the motion carries 1 abstention. 1 abstention. I don't know who's doing it. That's you, Murray. Okay, the January 17th meeting minutes.
I have one on page 4
Okay,
at the top. The first sentence says TBPB has read in RSA 674:73. The issue is the
oh, yep.
check out to the,
Yep, got it.
other than that, I have no corrections.
Anyone else?
Also on page 4. Middle paragraph where it starts off with Bruce volunteered to work with Jessica.
Mhm.
The actual last sentence, the first forum could be a presentation of what PRDs are, what ADUs are, and not delve specifically into the details of ADU ordinance. I don't recall saying that do a presentation on PRDs. I thought what I said was we would, the first forum would be almost like zoning 101,
Mhm.
for lack of a better way of explaining it, like it was going to explain our current zoning. So that would include PRDs. It would also include ADUs, it would include workforce housing, and it would, it would include our whole package, so.
So how do you want the sentence to read?
How about just a presentation of current zoning?
That might be the simplest, yeah.
Got it.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve Or do you need more time? Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
There a second?
Second,
Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote. George,
Yes.
Russ?
yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Yes. Murray? I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we will thank Olivia for coming to do the minutes and give you a second if you want to.
Oh, I'm gonna stay here.
Okay.
I don't wanna miss the meeting.
Okay,
And here's the folder where all your little name cards are in.
great, thank you. Thank you, Olivia. Okay, now we will go to public comments. Are there any public comments?
Yeah, Olivia, you're welcome to take notes so you can correct me when I'm done.
No public comments at this time? No? Okay, so I'd like to suggest that we move Ken Caisse up in the agenda and start with him, just in case he gets called out for on a fire call. That's happened a couple times at some of our meetings, so. Ken, why don't you take the microphone?
Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen occasionally. Anyways, after all the research we've did on now I'm having a brain cramp.
Building codes?
Well, not only the building codes, but the person to enforce them,
Code enforcement officer?
code enforcement officer. According to was my explanation of this from our town attorneys, is that the state has currently adopted all of these books except for in 1 and 2 family housing. So what I came up with is we need to adopt these because they have all of the fines. They have all of the criteria on how to assess and fine people that have violated the zoning ordinances and code ordinances. And what we found out is that we need to adopt these, the town does, so that we can have that in an official capacity, so that we can have that code enforcement officer be the person who starts this process from here, not going to the select board to write a letter and then going back to the select board to write a second letter, and then going to the lawyer to write their letter, and then possibly going into litigation from there. So what we need to do, and this has got to be done by you guys, is NFPA 101 is all the fire and safety codes. NF 96 covers standard ventilation controls for all commercial cooking operations, which we really have to have. This actually goes for building and the fire department also, because until we adopt these, the fire department can't go out and physically do all of their inspections that they need to do as well. NFPA 1, 2018. And then IBC, which is the International Building Codes 2018 as well. That's the new one. Right now, they're in between 2015 and 2018. There'll be a grace period of a little while, and then they'll go to the 2018. They already went to the 2018, but there's a grace period. If somebody was building in the meantime, they can still use the building codes from 2015 up until a certain point. And I don't know what that point is. So that's where we're at as a town. And we need to adopt these so that we can move on with the code enforcement officer and also have some of the legal requirements met for the fire department to do their inspections as well.
Okay, so you started by saying, except for single family and two family.
Single, yes, 1 and 2 family homes.
So that doesn't apply to 1 and 2 family homes, those.
It technically it does, but we as a town have not adopted it. So therefore, we're kind of in the limbo thing.
So once we adopt it.
Once we adopt this, it will be, as everybody else uses the same thing.
Okay,
But once we adopt it, then we can adopt the fines in it. We can adopt the processes in here without going to the select board for all of that as well. So our code enforcement officer, whoever that may be, would be able to just go right to the book and state it out and assess fines day one.
okay. I feel like the International Building Code is in our zoning already, but it's probably an old year. Is that?
It probably is, but we still have to adopt the new 2018 edition.
Okay,
And I don't know if we have to do that every year or if we can put a clause in there is that we will update when it gets updated from the state.
okay. And what's our deadline for this year to get, I mean? 'cause
Well, this year it's
we-
not going to happen. It would be
Okay.
2023. It'd be at the end of the year. It'd be for March meeting. We'd have to have hearings.
Yeah,
So I don't know if it's 1 or 2 hearings, but we'd have to set it up to have the hearings. And then we'd have to bring it to voting.
right. So the petition deadline has already passed. is
Correct.
that-
We
okay.
can't do that this year. There was no way. When I found out that from the lawyers that the state has adopted everything except for 1 and 2 family homes. And we hadn't done that yet. So she told us that we would be smart to do it.
So this is 2024 voting.
Yes.
Okay. So this is something we can incorporate when we do our regulatory review. It's part of that process.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And get it ready for next year so we can bring it to the
Yep.
to the people so we can then place or actually have a place for a code enforcement officer
Mhm.
at that point.
And is some of it in the subdivision and site plan, or is it all zoning ordinance? Or do we have, is it only in the zoning?
No,
ordinance?
all the zoning ordinance would apply then, once we adopt this, because this would be part of that and part of the whole zoning ordinance. So that would all be one entity at that point.
Okay, because I was just wondering, because the planning board updates the site plan and subdivision, it doesn't get voted on. So I'm wondering if there's something that we can do before.
No, and like I said, I think
Yeah.
once we adopt it, I think that we can just adopt it as to whenever they update it, we will adopt the updates.
Right.
So, and I think that covers everything that follows along with that.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about it? Okay. Anything else we need to know about that, or?
That's all I know right now.
I think I got an email from Bill and he referred to this, but he also said there was an issue with signs, that a temporary building sign. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I know there is a complaint out there. But again, we already adopted having it in writing, so therefore we don't have a complaint as of right now.
Okay,
And we'd have to fall back to the zoning for signage.
Yep.
And then does that constitute, you guys, zoning board, somebody would have to find out if that means a temporary sign as well.
yeah,
I mean, if you pave your driveway, somebody's gonna stick a road sign at the end of your driveway saying they paved it.
right.
I mean, for me to go by there and look at that, that's kind of the same thing. I mean, he's putting his brand on that building until they get siding on it.
Mhm.
And then it'll go away because there'll be no place for it there anymore.
Okay. So again, there's nothing we could do at this point.
And again, we have no complaint because no one wants to put it in writing yet.
Okay. So it's just something to add to our list of things to look at as temporary signage. I mean, look at our overall zoning ordinance. So, thank you, Ken. So we move on to the other items on the agenda, the Doug Guy minor subdivision. You might remember that they didn't take the L-chip check the first time when Murray went to deliver the plans, and we got some confusing, I contacted them and got some confusing responses, and ultimately an apology that they made a mistake and they did take the check. But just for everyone's information, they had to re-record the plan, which means there's a new plan number. This has all been put in the office and in the file, but so they're, just so everyone knows, there's two plan numbers, the old one and now a new one. For that plan, that was Doug Guy's map 2B lot 71. So on the Rowe subdivision update, everything was recorded and filed, and Keith took that over there. Thank you, Keith.
On the L-chip, as I understand it now, if it is presented by a representative of the town and the plat is to do with town-owned land,
Right.
then you don't need the L-chip.
Right,
But if it's for any private land, that's when you do need the L-chip.
right.
And so that was what they clarified.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chris, could you use your mic, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So do you want me to repeat anything, or do you catch all that?
No, but my hearing aids aren't working right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, so next up is the Invest New Hampshire HOP Grant. And for those who may not remember, we had, when we submitted the application and were awarded the grant, we thought we were going to be working with SWRPC. And they have since notified us that they don't have the capacity, they don't have the staff to work with us at this time. So put some calls out and got a response from Ivy and Carol Ogilvie. So they are here tonight to sort of give us their pitch, I guess. I did share our application with them, so they know what we're looking for. And I guess I would turn it over to you. Ivy is joining us remotely. She's traveling. I see her up on the screen. Thank you, Ivy, for coming to us from, I think, New York you're in, right?
Yes, I am in New York this week.
Thank you. Can we make her louder at all? Yeah. Okay. So maybe you could just introduce yourselves and give us a little background. And
It would be great if I could see the room instead of the screen, which I'm currently seeing, which is, I guess, Keith's screen and has the agenda on it.
he's going to try to figure that out for us.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I'm Ivy Vann. I'm a municipal planner. I'm certified by, oh, there we all are. Much nicer. I'm certified by the American Planning Association and the Congress for the New Urbanism to do town planning. And I'm a former Temple resident, so I know the town pretty well. And I'm excited by the possibilities of what we can do with the HOP grant as you have outlined it. I think it looks like a really good set of things that you want to accomplish. And I think that Carol and I can do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions about, you know, what I do besides appear on your Zoom screen.
Thank you. Go ahead, Carol.
Hey, thank you. I'm Carol Ogilvie. I am a land use planner. Some of you in the room know me from my years at the Planning Commission in Keene. I've been doing this work in New Hampshire for about 35 years, so I have a rather, broad experience in all facets of planning for towns primarily. I work for local governments, and I've been working on my own since I resigned from the town of Peterborough, retired in 2013. So I have done some work in Temple in the past. I'm familiar with the town. And of course, Ivy and I were both involved with the charrette, which was exciting. And we think that this application is really a perfect follow-up to the work that was done for the charrette. So I think we're both excited to work on this. As you know, from our discussions we've had in the past, we're both pretty passionate about housing and trying to find some solutions to what we're seeing, not just here, but everywhere. So this is an exciting time to be trying to break some new ground.
Indeed, yes. And Carol and I've worked together for years, all the way back to when she was the planner in Peterborough, and I was a member of the Peterborough Planning Board. So we work well together. We share our toys nicely, and we enjoy working together.
Anyone want to ask any questions, or you want me to ask questions?
And the other thing, of course, is that we are both approved consultants for the HOP grant process. We are both on the list of approved consultants that a town can hire to do their HOP grant work.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bruce. You had a question.
Well, I guess I just wanted to inform you that we've decided to move forward this year. We're going to hope to have housing forums, specifically housing. We're going to try to attempt to have one every month, starting in April, May, and June. And like I spoke earlier about, the first one may be zoning 101. It's going to be very elementary, and it's going to be introduction to new people and people in town that aren't informed and don't know what our zoning is. And then from there, I think, we're hoping to have a lot of input from the community, similar to the charrette. And so, I don't know how that's going to work with you guys with.
Well, Carol and I both believe that early and often is how you do your public engagement. So what I think I can speak for us, it's saying that we would love to piggyback onto those housing forums and do some of our public engagement as part of those housing programs. And we would, of course, be available as resources for you as you set those housing forums up. If you want us to talk about something or, explain a thing or illustrate a thing, we're available to do that. And as I say, we would very much like to use those housing forums as a way to collect information from the town and engage the town in this process, because really, I know that public engagement appears third on your HOP grant, but really and truly you need to do your public engagement as early in the process as you can, because as I think it was Christine I was talking to, when we do a code audit, I need to know what the town wants. When I do the code audit, I can look at the code and say, well, this to me looks like it's causing a problem. But unless I know what the town wants, it's harder to do that code audit in an effective way.
Well, I think too, one of the really important aspects of your holding these forums, and however Ivy and I participate or share or observe whatever that works out to be, the most important point is that townspeople are seeing that you all are doing this important work. It's not us coming in from the outside telling you things. You're doing your own work here, which is really, really important.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's why it's so important to do that public engagement early, because we're not coming in with solutions. We are coming in to find out what the town wants and help you arrive at solutions.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I had was, we had talked about with SWRPC about doing the regional housing needs assessment. And I asked Carol a little bit about this earlier. How would you collect that data? Would you plan to work with SWRPC and then with the town as well with the surveys, or how would you get that data for the needs analysis portion?
For needs analysis, that's really a question. We would work with SWRPC first of all, and see what information they've collected. It's also, we look at what's available for housing, what's available for potential places to put housing. All of those kinds of things go into the needs assessment. And we look back at the historical record to see how many building permits the town's been issuing over the last 15 or 20 years. What's the trend there, so that we can have some sense. And of course, we look at the census data to see what the census tells us about what's happening in Temple. So
And
yes,
we-
and.
Sorry. We know the Planning Commission has not released their housing needs assessment yet. There was a December deadline, but they got an extension to the end of March, but the data have been collected. I know that that is all there, so we will certainly be able to have access to the numbers. And much of it, I'm sure, for them has come from the census, but there'll be, other pieces that they perhaps haven't necessarily paid that much attention to. So we'll be using, both of those sources as is appropriate.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. If you want to add something, I have a different
Yeah, I
question.
do want to add something. I mean, we will be doing, as part of updating the appropriate chapters in the master plan, we will be doing local surveys in Temple, and going to events and asking people things, so that we can do an effective job of updating the vision chapter.
Yeah, so my question was linked to the master plan updates. I think typically a committee is formed of not necessarily just planning board members, but other people from within the community. Do you anticipate that you would follow that model as well?
We've done both things, Carol and I. Carol, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can find willing volunteers, I mean, for one chapter of a master plan, depending upon the town, it may not be seen as necessary, but I think we can sort of test the waters as we get going and see how that's going. I see that in your application, you also intend to have a regulatory audit work group. Now, that's a completely different focus, but we can perhaps at least, as tap into what those folks are working on and see if we can find some interest for this one chapter. But as there is other master plan work coming along, we may in fact decide that it makes sense to have a little subcommittee that we can run all of that master plan work by.
Right, because one of the things that we've struggled with, which, Ken sort of touched on earlier, is enforcement is one thing. And so we can make zoning regulations, but then the select board has to interpret it and the ZBA has to interpret it.
Right.
And, the Conservation Commission is working on their pieces, in terms of what to protect. So
Right.
there has to be some collaboration
Sure.
between the various boards and committees. And I guess that's kind of what I was envisioning when I put that into the grant, is that, the ZBA comes up with a problem when they're looking at an application and lets us know there's something in the zoning that, they're unclear about. So, that kind of thing happens.
Right.
So-
And it certainly, I think, is very advantageous to have those various groups represented in a committee, because
Mhm.
they all bring a different perspective and they have different issues and problems.
Right. So those were my main concerns, but one of the other, well, two other things. One is the timeline. We had anticipated starting in January, so I don't know what your thoughts were as far as timeline at this point. Just in terms of program administration, like what this was written, with SWRPC. So what would you do differently, or how do you see this sort of rolling out?
Well, Ivy can chime in here too, but I mean, we're only a month beyond that. And
Yeah.
I don't see that as a problem. We may have to do a little bit of catch up at some point, but this is a big project and it's anticipated to go out into a year from now, from spring, May
Right.
2024. So I think we'll have plenty of opportunity and plenty of notice if we think that we need to adjust anything as we go along. But it looks to me as if they gave a pretty conservative estimate on the timeline, giving themselves enough time to do these various tasks.
Mhm.
So at this point, I don't think that we're anticipating any issues, but
I don't see any. It looks to me like it's, there's plenty of time to get the work done. Can you talk to me about a little bit about what you envision the Regulatory Audit Committee doing?
Sure. So, well, we've been kind of keeping a running tab of things that have come up over the past couple of years in terms of conflicts with the state regulation or things that have been problematic or unclear when an application comes through. So there's that kind of thing. And also the regulatory audit, the last one was done, I think in 2012. So it's been quite some time.
Sure.
We find things almost with every application that either if a department no longer exists at the state, it could be as simple as that. Or, for example, our subdivision regulations say that there's 90 days to review an application and the state law is 65.
Right. Things like that.
We ran into some stuff with the dark skies ordinance, although we've since corrected that. There was other things that have come up, something around the water. I have a list at home
Good.
that I didn't bring with me.
Excellent. It's good to have those.
But it's those kinds of things that are maybe, seem minor, but, we don't notice them until they come up.
exactly.
So it's
Because-
just kind of a catch-all to look at that kind of thing. And then there's best practices, that we, maybe have to look at something, maybe some new technology has come out or some new thinking on how to address an issue.
Mhm, mhm.
And then it's, as you mentioned, and this is just, I'm speaking for myself here, but, we have new people living in town. And are we, for example, the school in our master plan, it talks about retaining the elementary school. I'm not sure that's still the case. I don't know. We seem to be losing kids more and more. So,
And that's something that we would investigate as part of rewriting the vision chapter. I mean, those are the kinds of questions that we would address there.
right.
Is
Right.
how do you see Temple being in 10 years? I mean, typically we look for a vision chapter to hold for 10 years. So we would be asking those kind of questions. What are the most important things to you? And when I write those surveys, I make them rank them. I don't let them tell me, 1, 2, or 3, which of these is important, because the answer is they're all important. So we have to push a little to get people to think hard when we're making choices. What are those choices going to look like?
Mhm. Others have questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah, our vision statement, luckily for you guys, it's fairly current. It's 2018.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
actually,
that'll be an easier update than the one Carol and I worked on one not too long ago. That was 2005. It was a long time ago.
yeah. So in our second paragraph of the vision statement, it actually speaks to the town's public elementary schools should be retained as an integral part of the community.
Sure. Well,
And we
that's
had a lot of public input. It took a couple of years for us to actually adopt this vision statement. So it's, I know
Right,
it's
but
5 years later, but
I was
I'm
going
sure
to
a lot of
say,
this is-
it's hard to believe that 2018 was 5 years ago, but it was. So those are all questions we'll ask again to see if we are getting the same answers.
Right. Right.
And one of the things that Carol and I are pretty careful about when we work on a master plan is we try not to address things in the master plan that are not the purview of the planning board. Because there are some things that people want that are not a thing that the planning board can manage. That's not part of their job or part of what the statutory requirements and allowances are. So that's a thing that we always keep in mind is whose job is this, and to make sure in the master plan that we're talking about who is really responsible for this thing that the town wants.
Right, and that's really important because we were asked to add an implementation chapter to our
That's
master
right.
plan by the grant committee. So yeah, we don't have one of those right now. So that's something we would have to create.
I'm a huge fan of an implementation chapter. I think it's absolutely essential because otherwise the master plan is an idea. It's not a roadmap, and the implementation chapter turns it into a roadmap.
It really helps you focus. You're not making up anything new. You're taking the goals and objectives, strategic action items, whatever you're calling them, you're taking them out of the plan that's already been developed, but you're putting it in a format then that's going to specifically identify, as Ivy said, whose job is it? And is this a priority if you want to identify those, and what your anticipated time frame is to accomplish that, so you can go back then to, it makes monitoring your plan that much easier. Did we do what we said we were going to do? And if not, why not?
Right. And also, I mean, since the thing that will happen after these first two things is changes, if that's what we decide, if that's what the town decides, changes to your zoning code. And those changes should be in the implementation plan. You have said that you want to accomplish X. In order to accomplish X, these are the three things in your zoning code that are currently preventing X from happening. And this is what the new language should be if you decide to take this on. So that's also a big piece of an implementation plan.
I have a concern with the third paragraph of the mission statement.
In the temple
vision statement?
in the temple vision statement.
Yes, the third paragraph says that Temple's residents should have a diversity of socioeconomic backgrounds and ages. How do you do that?
Well,
I think that would be unconstitutional.
no, what that really, that is pretty much what I think of as boilerplate language. And really what it's saying is we need housing stock that works for people, works for diverse economic situations and diverse household makeups. So what that sentence says is we want to be sure that we're not just building big single family houses on big lots, that we have some other choices if that's what the town wants. So we have to find out what the town wants, and then we think about how do we get that. But that's how I read a sentence like that, is that it doesn't mean that you're going to go down to the bus station and recruit people to move to Temple. It means, are we thinking about the opportunities for people in Temple? Does that help at all?
I think so. I think generally, I think the concern is that this grant is going to be used to just promote housing, and that's not our objective. So just putting that out there.
It is a housing opportunity grant.
Yes.
But it's, what our job, Carol and my job, is to find out what Temple wants, and then make sure that, and then, first, that's the first thing, is to find out what you want. And the second thing is to see where are the problems in the code. And then the third step, should you choose to take it, is to make the changes to the code. But we don't do anything until we hear what Temple wants.
Right. And so our grant right now is only for the first two steps. But presumably we, if we identify things that we want to change, which we know there are some things that we do have to change because we're not in compliance with the state regulations, then the regulatory development would come as the third phase, which we have not applied for at this point.
That's how it works.
Yeah, the needs analysis and planning is step one,
Yep.
and then the regulatory audit is step two.
Right,
Right.
right. Although I think what I heard them say is the community engagement is step one.
It really is.
1A.
Yeah, yeah. We start with community engagement and talking to as many people as possible. We'll do a survey. We'll come to your housing forums if you would like us to. We would certainly like to, because that's a convenient place to talk to people. I often do things like show up at, do you still have strawberry shortcake on Memorial Day? No, you don't do that anymore.
I think it's been a couple of years since, well,
Yeah.
since COVID.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
ice cream on the 4th of July.
Yeah, right, but there used to be, the reason I remember is because I had to go buy the strawberries one year. There used to be on Memorial Day, there was a strawberry, it might have been strawberries and ice cream, not strawberry shortcake, but in any case, strawberries were involved.
Did
And
you
there
hear
was
that,
a
George?
concert.
Strawberries on Memorial Day, is that still happening? Strawberry shortcake or strawberry ice cream?
I think it does.
Yeah,
So in any case, I have a booth that I take to events, town events like that, that says the town planner is in, tell us what you want to see in your town. And I have, visual preference surveys and short written surveys. And I talk to people. Sometimes I give them a piece of paper and say, write on this piece of paper what you would like to see in Temple. And then I take their picture with their sign. So things like that are things that we do as a way of collecting as much information from as many people as possible as we work on this project. Because we want to talk to people who don't necessarily show up at the planning board.
Mhm.
We want to be sure we're talking to as many people as we can.
Right. Questions, comments from anyone else here on the board?
I think that the strawberry thing though is done on the 4th of July.
Oh, is it the 4th of July? I know it used to be earlier because we used frozen strawberries because it wasn't strawberry season yet. This is a million years ago. I mean, my oldest child is 35 now, so this is a long time ago.
I actually have a question for
Ivy?
Ivy on Zoom. So what? No. So what do you recommend of looking at, say, 50 years down the road of the future of the community when most of the people that are currently involved in making the decisions are going to be no longer around, for lack of a better word?
Well, we don't usually work that far in the future. We try to work, as I said, we try to get the vision chapter to think about 10 years ahead. And we think about the things and then it will be time to think about it again, so that when you get 50 years ahead, you haven't gotten there in one fell leap from 2023. You've gotten there in incremental steps. So we don't do a plan for the town for 50 years ahead. We do a plan for the town based on what people tell us now, looking 10 years ahead.
I have a question. I think this is linked to something Christine was talking about earlier. Things like short-term rental has come up as an issue. And because the state hasn't made a decision yet on that, we're like in limbo for all intents and purposes. What do other towns do in the interim when there's issues, when the state doesn't have a regulation in place to help us?
Typically nothing. Right now, and Carol will know, she's been working with one of the regional planning commissions. She may have a better answer than I do. My understanding right now is until we have determined what kind of rules can be placed on short-term rental, Towns are just waiting to see what is going to happen. The other thing that I will say about short-term rentals, and I know that Temple is feeling this quite acutely right at the moment because you lost 7 or 8 long-term rentals that are now going to be short-term rentals. So it feels very pressing for you right now. In general, short-term, except for a very few places, the Upper Valley being one of them, where there's a huge influx of temporary workers in the winter time, the short-term rentals are less problematic than we tend to think of them. And as I say, I know that Temple's feeling it right this minute because you can see what happened. But my understanding is that in the state of New Hampshire, towns are just waiting to see what the state is going to do about enabling legislation about short-term rental. And the real answer to the short-term rental conundrum is that we need more housing. Short-term rentals would be less problematic if we had more housing in general. They're not in and of themselves evil. The problem is that we just don't have enough housing. So I wish I had a better answer for you. Carol, do you have any better thoughts on that?
Only that there are some towns that have stopped short of trying to prohibit them because that's clearly where they get into trouble, but they have required them to be permitted, meaning they need permission from police, fire, solid waste, all the issues, those things that become issues in towns that have a lot of this. So they need the fire chief to go through and do an inspection. They want the health officer to be there. So they do require them to go through that process. And that has at least helped to mitigate some of those impacts while not prohibiting them specifically.
Yeah, I've heard that is a solution that I too have heard about. So that's something that you might want to think about. Do you want to handle it that way? Or do you want, in the meantime, or do you simply want to wait and see what the state does? If you want to do it that way, then that's a new set of regulations that you would need to adopt in 2024 because it's too late to do it for 2023.
Right.
So at that point, you might, by then there may be guidance from the state, but a thing to think about.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the legislative updates on short-term rentals yet for this year, but
we had some last year.
yeah.
And my guess is they probably will not show up till the second term. Because the second year of the biennium, because the first year of the biennium is so deeply concerned with the budget. So my guess is that we won't see those until the fall of 2023. We will see those filings start happening.
Okay. Anyone else have questions, concerns? Are we taking?
Yeah, sure.
Take public comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, just grab my cup.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Carol has things.
Pam Kingston. I was thrilled to hear both Ivy and Carol open up their commentary by saying the number one starting point is community involvement and community communication. I was actually pleased to hear it January 9th when I sat here and Bruce brought up about the forums that would be happening to get community involvement. Sadly, I think that horse left the barn at the time of the charrette. When you pose questions such as what do you see, feel, and want to see for a particular plot of land, but then come to the public forum and see for a day and a half that the group focused on something very, very different than what the community was asked to discuss. I hope by saying the word community involvement this time, it truly means open dialogue, open discussion to truly hear what the community wants, because now since August, it has festered throughout our community with rampant ideas and frustrations, hurt feelings. 2 flyers that just came out in the mail with half-truths perhaps on them at best. Hopefully not paid for by our tax dollars. I think it's important that you hear from the public to understand that the charrette perhaps may not have been the best place to start, but it happened. But there may need to be some backpedaling that happens as well, so that the community feels as though they truly are being heard and that their opinions of their town truly do matter. And it's not just the ideas of the planning board.
Yeah, so
Just
the
my
planning
comment.
board didn't send the flyers related to the highway, just to clarify that did not come from this body. Yeah, okay. Okay,
But it does reflect commentary that came out of the charrette. So that's the only reason I just brought it,
mhm.
because it was lumped together as part of it.
Go ahead, Connie. Yeah, can you use the microphone?
Since Temple, I'm going off of what Bruce said at the last meeting. We have typically worked with Southwest, and I think we're pretty comfortable with them. And this housing focus is of concern, not just to me, but I think to a lot of people in town. And I guess what I would wonder, do you have examples of master plans that the two of you have worked on? And can the public see those and to see how, I mean, obviously, one of my concerns all along has been, you don't have to listen to us. It's just kind of like the charrette. You don't, you decide the master plan, the planning board, that doesn't go to vote, town vote. Correct?
It does not go to town vote. The planning board adopts it, but it's based on community input. It's not something we create. It's something that's collaborative.
Okay. That's what I would hope very much. But I guess if we could see some examples of the directions that you tend to take people and of the kind of zoning that came out of that.
Carol and I have just done 2 master plans recently. We did one, I'm going to put it in the chat. We did one for Tufton Borough, where they were interested in more housing choice. And so that shows up in their master plan, and also Middleton, which is a quite small town, not unlike.
Can you say that second one again, Ivy? We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry, Middleton, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Which is a quite small town, not unlike Temple in that it does not have water and sewer. Temple has more of a village than Middleton does. But again, we were looking at reflecting what the people of Middleton told us. And in the implementation chapter, you can see what we suggested as things that they might want to do if they want to implement the things that we heard from the people of Middleton.
Repeat that at some point. I think it's very difficult for us to hear, much less the people on the recording.
It's Tufton Borough and Middleton were the 2.
And they're up on their websites. You can go look at them.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, so I just to recap, I think Ivy and Carol, thank you very much for being willing to help us with this and work with us on this with the town of Temple. Thank you. I feel, we're really lucky to have with all your experience and knowledge in living close by, and Ivy, you used to live here. So I think you're gonna do what's best for our interest in the end when you guide us and help us. But the forums are gonna be key to it, as you agreed. And I want to stick to the one in April, one in May, one in June, guaranteed. We're doing it, and we're gonna advertise it. And I think the key is we just have to put our heads together to try to have it be the right presentation to have everybody be able to get involved, and so be able to to have the right tools, not just throw people at a round table session and not, we need some direction. It's not really my thing. I can help but I think it's going to take a few of us to,
Facilitate.
to facilitate and make that.
There are exercises that Carol and I've done at various times. We can offer those to you. And they are, they're ones that we've developed and have found helpful. So that's a thing that's available. I suspect that we will start to begin to do some community engagement before April. Simply because of the timeline that you mentioned. I'm gonna go back and look at that. Yeah, see, that needs analysis and planning. You're looking at finishing that up in April. So we're gonna need to start talking to people soon if we're going to get there. We may need to slip that if that's turns out to be the best way to get that involvement.
And I just want to add regarding the forum, Ivy and I are certainly happy to help you organize and figure out, what to do and how to do it. But again, I think it's really important for these forums that we're perhaps a little bit more in the background and you guys are in the front, because again, this is your town and your project. And, we will do what we can to help you make it happen, but it should be seen as your work.
Yeah, and I agree. And I don't have a problem being in the front, that being that person. I don't mind that. But I want to be able to know how to facilitate how to do this. So
Right.
The zoning 101, I think, will be right in my wheelhouse because I know it really well. And I'm not perfect, but I think I can explain it in layman's terms to the average citizen that doesn't know, starting with 3 acres and 35-foot setback and just all the basics, and there's people that didn't even know that we actually had ADUs.
Right.
And that we had detached ADUs and what's workforce housing. And, so I think that's just a good start, it's everything after that I feel I could use some help. I'm hoping that.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody else does their part.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's not like we're the only ones talking, that we're getting questions as well and responding to what the questions are from the community.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, how to do
Right.
that. Right.
Right. And that we're hearing from people that maybe don't normally or aren't comfortable speaking in a room like this, that, maybe smaller conversations, group conversations or one-on-one. I think to make sure that we're hearing from a variety of people.
Yeah, that goes to my question of how do you engage the people that are mostly disenfranchised from the processes like this compared to the people that benefit from the status quo of being the way it is now, that are the ones that have the time to be engaged in the processes like this?
Well, I can tell you what I do. I go to where the people are. I put up posters in places that give space for people to write in. Temple doesn't have a laundromat, but I will tell you that I always put posters up in the laundromat to get people's comments, because the people who are doing their laundry at the laundromat don't have time to come to the planning board meeting. So showing up at community events and showing up places where people are and talking to them is really crucial to our process.
Great. Okay, do we want to make a decision tonight, or we need to mull this over? What's up? Thoughts on next steps? Yeah, can you use a microphone, please?
I just think this is a pretty big decision to make and a commitment of a lot of money in a year's worth of time without a little bit of thought, a little bit more research. What direction has this taken other towns in? And we're right in election period. I would ask that you give it, some time before you make a quick decision on who to use. I think it's going to affect the town for years.
So given that there really aren't, I don't want to sell you guys short, but we, we don't really have other options available to us at this point. Southwest is not available.
Not this minute, but they said they don't have staff now.
Yeah, and they don't know when they will have staff. And so when I reached out to them and said we were going to be looking at other consultants, they said, oh, great, that's a huge relief for us. And I've actually heard from 2 other towns that are in the same situation that we're in and can't find any consultants to work with. So that's where we're at.
I personally like some time to go look at the previous work and
Sure. Okay. That's fine.
take a look at it. I'm sure it's good, but I'd like to understand it.
Jim Kingston. I know you're all referencing a bunch of documents here this
Sure.
evening. Are those in the public record somewhere, the application for grant? I
Yes.
couldn't find them readily in a web search. So-
If the board assistant down at the town office, you can either email her or go stop by the office. She has copies.
Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like we'll table this to the next meeting, which is February 21st. I believe, yep, February 21st. And yeah.
So I have an explanation for the record. What exactly are we tabling?
Just giving time to look at their other work in other towns, I think is what Murray has requested to, and some time to look at the master plans that they worked on. And I don't know, is there anything else besides?
Well, I
that?
think what you were requesting is, do we make a decision right now
Mhm.
on which vendor to go with? Or do we take some time to look at it? I just requested some time to review their work and.
Ivy and Carol's.
Yep.
Yes. Okay,
And we come as a pair, it's not either one of us.
sorry, what, Ivy?
We come as a pair, not as.
Oh, yes,
one of us or
I'm
the other
aware.
of us.
It is a big job and it will take both of you, I'm sure. Are you working with any other towns on the HOP grants at this point?
I am. I have a one in Lebanon that I'm working on with a much larger team.
Okay,
And like Carol, I get frequent phone calls from people saying, so.
sorry, you're both talking at the same time because Carol's not,
Carol can.
use the
talk.
microphone.
Sorry, quickly, just going to clarify, not currently working on a HOP grant, but I've managed 3 other grant projects from New Hampshire Housing Finance that are very similar to this.
Okay,
And I was part of those too. Those were in Peterborough. So at least 2 of them were. So,
thank you.
all right. Thank you. Happy if you think of things you'd like to
Thank
ask
you.
us.
Safe travels over the mountain to you, Carol, and to you, Ivy.
Thank you,
and
Carol. Good to see
Thank you
you.
both.
Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
me.
Ivy Van.
Sure.
So next up on the agenda is the job description for our planning board clerk. I did draft something which we can pass down. It's basically, I pulled some of the information from the one that Olivia shared with us at the last meeting. You want to take a minute to read it? It's definitely not everything that Betsy was doing, because that previous description was Betsy's. So it's basically just keeping keeping track of the records, inquiries, applications and forms and documents related to the planning board. I'm obviously doing the minutes. I didn't include doing the agendas because I think Olivia and I were duplicating efforts on that. It's no problem I do the agenda, send it to Olivia, and then she'd send it out. Like was an extra step in the process. So I'm just trying to streamline a little bit more Sorry? Oh, thank you. So I would like to get something posted as soon as possible so we can fill the position so Murray can participate more and fully in the meetings and just have someone designated to do the minutes. And then there'll be some training involved with the other aspects, but taking the minutes, I think, is the critical part at this point. Did you get a copy down there?
Yes.
Yep.
Do you know of anybody that might be interested?
I don't. I mean, I've been away for a couple weeks, so I don't really know. Do you know of anybody that might be interested, George?
I do not.
Okay.
I didn't know if we should advertise for this.
Yeah, I'd like to get it out and posted, but I wanted everyone to look at the description first and see if I'm missing
We
anything.
advertised for a new bookkeeper
I heard.
and we only got one answer.
Do you have any people interested?
We have one person that showed an interest and we're gonna be interviewing her at the next select board meeting.
Okay. So people are reading the postings. I guess that was that's the takeaway.
I think one of the things that Olivia pointed out is many of them are shared responsibilities as well. So we might want to show that they're not responsible for everything, is the fact that they have help too many times to do.
Right.
that.
I think I mean, I just alluded to that. I maybe didn't specify, but said in coordination with the select board or working with the chair and the vice chair and the secretary as needed. Well, I'd like to not scare people off. Yes.
And it also might help to improve the compensation.
Oh, thank you, Connie. So I don't know if you all heard that. It's very icy. So,
Oh, I was saying it might help to improve the compensation financially.
yeah, so I guess that's a question I had more for the select board. Do you normally advertise the dollar amount or do you just discuss that with applicants? What's the hiring policy? Right. Right. No, I wouldn't go above. I didn't know if it was.
Be more of like have it listed somewhere on a piece of paper with that.
Yeah, I don't think we normally advertise the dollar amount, but if somebody inquired, we could tell them.
We'd like to talk to people and get their feelings. You know, we have discretion if we have to throw more at it or whatever.
Right.
But we already have established this rate and.
Right in the budget.
Continue with this for now.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I put 10 to 12 hours per month. That's what we budgeted, right, Olivia? But the filing was additional.
Yeah, but that's not enough.
Yeah. Well, I scaled back some of the responsibilities.
Whatever you want to do, Mike.
Yeah, did you see a copy? Oh, right, I emailed it to you earlier, but yes, please.
So Randy said, how would you like to take the minutes of the meetings? And I said, oh, that would be, yeah, I could do that. That would be fun. And I never saw this. So I thought I was hired to take minutes at the meetings. And then it turned out I was supposed to do some filing. So I thought I was supposed to do filing of minutes. And 2 years later, I learned that's actually Carol's job. It's not my job. And she does the minutes for all the boards. So, and then it turned out I'm supposed to do the case files, which I was only beginning to understand what the heck they were. And then we had Boo and Ben. And I looked at the pile of documents and the number of documents I would have to go through to sort those out and make sure we had one copy of everything or 2 copies. That's what we agreed to instead of 4 copies, so that we could get rid of stuff to have room for the number of cases that are coming in now. And I said, I am way too old to get through this in my lifetime. I can't do it. In the short term, it is much more than a 12-hour a month job to get the filing system up and running the way it should be running. Then I think it could be scaled back to something else. But we had 6 cases last year and 6 cases this past, or the last 2 years. We've had 6 cases and complicated ones in a couple of cases. So it's a really big detailed administrative job, and you need somebody who is willing and able to do that. And if you want them to organize the case files, you're going to have to put more hours into it.
Yeah, so I guess I was thinking that would be something we wouldn't do right away with somebody that came in, and it would be something that would be managed by board members initially. Because for that very reason, and I don't want to overwhelm a new person coming in.
Yeah, even somebody with 3 years experience found it quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
The other thing is that a lot of the information that this job description says the clerk is supposed to maintain is actually information that comes into Carol. It doesn't come to me, and she files it herself.
Are you talking about Betsy's description or the one I?
Well, yours has a lot of
I
Betsy's
took a
stuff
lot
in
of-
it.
Yeah, but I took a lot of the other stuff out.
Right, but you still said, let's see, ensure completeness of planning board case files and maintain records of cases.
Mm.
So I was keeping everything I had, but then when I started comparing it with what Carol had documents that I didn't have.
Mm.
So, and it works for the clerk to do it if they're in the office and the documents come to the clerk. But when some of them go to Carol and some of them go to you and people go straight to you and don't come to the clerk,
Mhm.
there's no way the clerk can keep an accurate record of the dates that all the case documents came in
Mhm.
or the case documents went out. It's because it's not being done in the office anymore. I mean, Mari's getting, or you're getting the notices of hearings out. I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
So there needs to be a way to make it easier for a person to really wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
You've heard enough.
So I think it's going to be a transitional. I mean, the immediate need is to do the minutes.
Yeah.
So could you use the microphone?
So we have to make a proposal for a budget to spend to actually put this, or is this?
No, the budget is fine. It's just the posting of the description. So we'll work within the parameters of the budget, what we've put in for the year already. That won't change.
Well, I think this is sufficient for now, that we should use this as a starting point to put on the web page and actually put into the local paper. So at least get the ball rolling.
Do you guys advertise in the newspaper too, or just on the website?
Depends on what it's for, but this.
For this, I would.
We're not getting anybody in town.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, also, I will state again that you probably should say what the compensation is, because of, you can't just like spend money on a newspaper advertisement, like, oh, here's a job. And then leave it up in the air of what job pays.
Well, I mean, I don't know anybody that posts numbers except for Dunkin' Donuts and.
I mean, most places tell you what you can expect to get per hour working.
And that's fine if they want to call and ask that question.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna apply to the job that just has a question mark next to the expected wage.
Right, right. Other thoughts on this? Any changes or edits to the?
Thanks for doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, this looks okay. But it sounds like we should plan on maybe a budget increase next year to catch up on the case files. Unless we can do it ourselves.
Well, we did put in extra for filing for
Yeah.
this year. But like I said, I don't want to,
Yeah, it's not part of, I wouldn't change this.
yeah,
It's part of it.
I,
The budget stop you from interviewing somebody if it's within reason. Because the board can ultimately say, okay.
Yep.
And go over budget.
Right.
That's not an issue.
I want to make sure we have someone who's willing to put in that time as well, so. And if someone's not willing to put in that time, then we have a different conversation, right? So,
So would that change the hours per?
no, this
month?
is just for meetings.
Okay,
The 10 to 12 was just for meetings. It wasn't for the organizing the records. You know, it was just for keeping the files and the minutes. So. Okay. Well, if everyone's okay with that description, other than the dollar amount, which I'm kind of on the fence on that personally. See if we get any inquiries.
All we can do is tell them what we're paying right now. And if it's in the ballpark, they'll come and talk.
Yeah. Yep.
And if you want to do all more and don't want to talk to us, we don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's around 20 an hour right now. Yeah.
Besides that, we have a 3% increase in the budget, a 4% increase in the budget this year. So as of March, they would get retro to January of that, well, that 4%.
Right. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda so we're not driving, and hopefully the roads are not too bad. On the flood maps, nothing new at this point, other than to say that there is a webinar available on the New Hampshire Office of Planning Development YouTube page on the introduction to the floodplain ordinances, if anyone's interested. Nothing on driveway, tax map updates is not until after town meeting. I can give you this afterwards if you want, Murray. And I haven't heard anything on the natural resources inventory. And I think we have already talked about the other two items, the housing form planning and Ken's item, and I had added the sign regulation thing, but it sounds like it was related to what you talked about earlier. On the upcoming webinars on February 16th, that's next Thursday, the Office of Planning and Development has a webinar at noon. It's their planning lunches at noon from
What was
12.
that date again?
It's November 16th.
February.
Sorry.
I just.
Sorry. February 16th. At noon, it's a webinar and it's on navigating the planning and zoning board handbooks. What's new in the 2022 edition? I sent an email out about it today with the link.
Okay.
So that you should have that in your email. Does anyone have anything else from the present? Okay.
So we're almost done.
I think that was all on the agenda. If there's anything else.
Yeah, I just wanted to just bring up, and with all respect, Mary, obviously, I respect your right to want to look into, other options possibly, or see the work that Ivy and Carol have done, but I feel like we should make a decision the next meeting. Be all prepared and do our homework and come to the next meeting and vote and not leave them hanging. And we're already going to be into April before we started the process, and we had this grant for $45,000. We lost 3 months. So
yeah.
There's always going to be the 3 or 4 people that are going to come in here in this hall and they're going to tell us that, we got to keep kicking the can and we got to keep doing more research and more homework. But they've been telling us that 5-6 years ago. When this whole board got flip-flopped because of that, the same tactics are happening again. There's certain people aren't going to be happy. They're not going to like what we're going to do anyway, but we're doing exactly what we were told to do 4 or 5 years ago. And that's getting professional help. Right. And it doesn't mean that there's going to be quadruplex built in every field in town. This is these scare tactics. This is simple. What we're doing is well thought out by professionals. And so in my
and with community engagement, like
That's the
we
key.
wouldn't get the grant if it didn't include that.
Right.
We would not have been given that grant.
Right.
So it's
No, the point is we have to do something like
Yeah.
that because it's been, as you say, the can's been kicked down the road so many times now. We get criticized for that too. So I think with the options we've got, and because it's already funded, we've got no option really, because we need to do something to show the town that we are including them in all of these discussions. And I think we have to. I don't think there's a choice. And I think they are professional. There's no problem with their skill set. So I've got no problem with using them as a resource. I think they'd be a great resource for us.
Shall we
Yeah,
do?
I mean, I just, this is the first time I've met them.
And I
first
respect
I've
that. Yeah,
looked at,
exactly.
and
Yep.
We've got
Right.
some,
Totally
we've got some work
respect.
products that we can review. Happy to have that absolute next meeting. Just-
Okay,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
okay, roll call vote. George?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chief, for doing the technology for us again.